BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNed88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And welcome to BBOR, the home of true crime talk radio and your premier destination for unsolved mysteries, criminal psychology, and exploring the dark side of cyberspace. My name is Ned DeHaan, and I am your host, as well as the creator of AstroPsych 400 here on YouTube, and regular contributor to the Zodiac Killer channel. And a great way to support these shows is just by listening to some more content. But you can also go over to Amazon.com and have a look at the book Killer on a White Horse, written by me, Ned DeHaan. It is a novel, murder mystery, inspired by the Zodiac Manson connection, but it is indeed fictional. However, who doesn't love a good mystery? And there is always the TeeSpring page. Feel free to check out some of the merchandise. And remember, being weird is not a crime. Let the show begin. Okay, hello everybody. Today is Wednesday, and on Wednesdays this year I've been doing a regular segment about Jack the Ripper, perhaps the world's most famous unsolved murder mystery. Jack the Ripper is a story that goes all the way back to 1888, and it remains unsolved to this day. On Mondays I do a regular segment about the Zodiac Killer, called just that, Zodiac Monday, and I did a previous episode called The Zodiac Killer on True Crime Talk Radio, and that morphed into the current state of Zodiac Monday, which is now known as the Zodiac Killer News Report. And I wanted to do this episode because in the near future, I'm hoping to do the same for the Jack the Ripper case. So please look out for some new episodes here on Black Box Online Radio, a regular segment that is going to be more of a Jack the Ripper report. And that is done for a very specific reason, and that is because it's not just about responding to questions and comments in the audience, which I love from you guys. It's also just about responding to pieces of content, media, as well as articles, podcasts, YouTube videos, books, and I had the ability to pull from all types of different sources and just share the findings that I had about this particular subject. And yes, I do hope one day that the story of the Ripper will be solved. They'll be able to identify who committed these crimes back in 1888, as well as beyond. I mean, some people think that the Whitechapel murders continued until 1891. Some people think that there was a set of pre-Ripper crimes, and absolutely horrible, but I hope that there will be some type of closure brought to the case. But in the meantime, we will be discussing the findings that have been shared by theorists, ripperologists, if you will. So I invite you to hit the like button and subscribe, and if you want to follow along with all of these true crime discussions, and you can also put your ideas in the comment section down below, and maybe they will be worked into a future episode of Black Box Online Radio, a future Ripper Wednesday. And, of course, you can go over to BuyMeACoffee.com. BuyMeACoffee.com allows you to make a donation or contribution to help support the show, and anybody who makes a donation will get a shout-out on Zodiac Monday. Now, there are two previous suspects that I've discussed here on Ripper Wednesday, and they are Charles Lechmere and Aaron Kosminski, two of the prime suspects in the case. I think that Aaron Kosminski is someone who has definitely been under the microscope a little bit more, whereas Charles Lechmere is someone who has been zoned in more frequently over the last 10 to 15 years. And between the two of them, I absolutely lean more toward Aaron Kosminski as a Jack the Ripper suspect. Now, I'm not saying that he is my suspect because I don't know who the Ripper was, and I'm definitely not going to endorse a suspect until I'm about 99% certain. But Aaron Kosminski is someone who was a Polish barber. He is someone who was mentally unstable in Whitechapel at the time of the crimes, during the Autumn of Terror, if you want to call it that. And really, it's the summer and autumn of terror. But I can comprehend this narrative that has been put forward about how Aaron Kosminski was targeting women, murdering them, mutilating them, and then his mental state began to deteriorate, and ultimately he goes into the asylum And Charles Lechmere is someone who simply could have just been in the wrong place at the wrong time, and ultimately Charles Lechmere becomes a Jack the Ripper suspect because he was a witness to the murder of Polly Nichols, a witness to finding her body. But just because somebody is walking to work and he happens to encounter a terrible and tragic situation does not mean that he was responsible for it. And I know that that is something that a lot of people don't want to hear and they don't want to comprehend. But that's my honest take on the subject as of now. But when it comes to the Ripper case, there are multiple suspects, and there are, just countless people that could be examined as a Jack the Ripper suspect. And one of them that I've talked about recently on this channel was Louis Deemschutz, who is another witness in the case. He was a witness to the discovery of the body of Long Liz Stride, Jack the Ripper's third victim, and that was the night of the double event, where first Polly Nichols is murdered, then Annie Chapman is murdered, then there's the double event, which saw the deaths of Liz Stride and Catherine Eddowes. Liz Stride was the first victim, and Jack the Ripper, or somebody pretending to be the Ripper, wrote in a postcard called the Saucy Jackie postcard that there was a double event where the first victim squealed a bit and the Ripper wasn't able to mutilate her. So then the Ripper went after Catherine Eddowes and not only mutilated her body but cut out her kidney and allegedly cut the kidney in half and mailed it in with another Ripper correspondence, the From Hell letter. So Louis Deemschutz is a witness to the discovery of the body of Liz Stride, and the story goes that his horse shied as the horse was approaching the body, and one Ripperologist named Randy Williams proposes that that is absolute nonsense, that a horse would not shy at the scent of blood, or not only that, in Whitechapel in 1888, horses would be going up and down the streets, and not only would they be smelling the scent of blood from meat markets, these meat markets would even be selling horse blood. Selling horse meat that would have blood in them. So that would be something that absolutely should not bother a horse. So there should be a lot of suspicion placed on Louis Deemschutz. And Randy Williams goes on to say that Louis Deemschutz is one of his suspects, but he entertains a group murder theory. And that is that there were multiple participants in the Jack the Ripper case. Number one, Louis Deemschutz, but also an individual that was an associate of Deemschutz named Isaac Kozabrodsky, and another one named Samuel Friedman. He believes that Isaac Kozabrodsky did the majority of the ripping, but that Deemschutz and Kozabrodsky committed the murder of Long Liz Stride, and Samuel Friedman went to Mitre Square and murdered Catherine Eddowes on the night of the double event, and this was all done because they were a group of Russian Jews who were trying to make a mockery of Christianity as well as a mockery of prostitution, and they wanted to scare the general public into behaving in a certain way. It's the whole theory of how the Ripper crimes were used to influence modern culture. And it's a very loud theory, it's a very bold theory, but if I have to give you my honest take on the subject, I think that guy, Randy Williams, is having way too much fun with the material. This is a murder mystery. Real people were murdered, and I believe that he is genuinely sharing his findings and his research, but he is having way too much fun with it. Number one, he called his book Sherlock Holmes in the Autumn of Terror. He didn't call it Jack the Ripper in the Autumn of Terror. There's a subtitle that is somewhere on the bottom of the book that says The True Story of Jack the Ripper, but calling it Sherlock Holmes in the Autumn of Terror, and he's talking about how he wants to do an audiobook where he's going to do the voice of Louis Deemschutz, and then he's going to say something like, "Yes, hello, my name is Louis Deemschutz. I'm supposed to sound like a Russian Jew, but for some reason I end up sounding like a West Virginian pretending to be from Transylvania. Okay, I didn't do the Russian Jewish part very well, but West Virginian pretending to be from Transylvania, that part I got down. Yeah, he's just simply having too much fun with the material. And theories like that are very, very wild. But is that what actually happened? Did this group of Russian Jewish anarchists commit a series of homicides in 1888 because they wanted to use the media coverage around them to influence modern culture. I am not convinced of that. Not convinced of that for a second. And Randy Williams isn't the only person to propose that. In a recent episode, I was talking about the Jill the Ripper theory, where that is that Jack the Ripper was actually a woman, and that it was a woman who committed the crimes because she wanted to dissuade men from going into the profession of being a midwife, that men were entering the midwife profession, and that, again, just if a woman were to commit those crimes, that men would just be dissuaded from anything to do with female caretaking because of the crimes of Jack the Ripper. I simply do not believe that's what happened. And there was an essay that was shared to me about that, about how Jack the Ripper could have been a woman, and one of the possibilities in that was that Mary Kelly, the final victim of Jack the Ripper, who was the most viciously murdered, I mean, her body was the most viciously mutilated, was actually the orchestrator of everything. And that's not actually Mary Kelly that everybody sees in the horrible photo. Instead, it is that Mary Kelly murdered the first 4 women and then murdered another individual, staged the scene, faked her own death. I mean, to be very honest with you guys, if I can, I don't think that's true. I don't believe that Mary Kelly was Jack the Ripper. I just think that some people are looking at an unsolved murder mystery, an unsolved set of events, and they're trying to think of things that are a little bit outside the box. And that's good. Outside the box thinking is good. But sometimes it can go in impractical ways. And then blaming Mary Kelly for the Ripper crimes is also something that I just don't think is what happened in the historical timeline. And wild theories are going to come up. I mean, I dealt with the Zodiac killer mystery for years, as well as a host of other true crime cases here on Black Box Online Radio for the Anything Goes segment. It's just very simply that people don't understand what happened, so they want to just look at the known participants in the story, the known characters in the story. And I don't like using that characters, but sometimes it comes up in the true crime world, the word characters. And that is that they just are looking at the people whose names they know. Well, let's re-examine this. Okay, there's a witness to one of the crimes. How about Charles Lechmere? Well, could he have been the Ripper? And let's think of a way in which Charles Lechmere could have been Jack the Ripper. How about Louis Deemschutz? How about the victims themselves? How about Mary Kelly? Was she an active participant in this? And that's just simply what I think that's going on. Mental gymnastics, rethinking a story that we've heard many times, and using the known members of the story as the killer. And that is absolutely not a way to solve a murder mystery. And this all relates back to what I was talking about at the beginning about how Aaron Kosminski might be a better suspect than Charles Lechmere, because according to the book naming Jack the Ripper, they might actually have DNA that could have been extracted from a shawl that was found from one of the crime scenes after the murder of Catherine Eddowes, and that DNA could be traced back to Aaron Kosminski, according to that particular book. But of course, those findings are not universally accepted. And the team that was behind that book, it's not just one person, it's not just Russell Edwards, but the team behind that book seems not only confident of their findings, they're saying it's like a 99% chance that they've identified Aaron Kosminski as Jack the Ripper via DNA. Well, you would have to wonder, if it actually is a 99% DNA match, why isn't that universally accepted? And my ultimate response would be, it's probably not as strong as they say it is. But still, Aaron Kosminski does come across as a reasonable Jack the Ripper suspect. And I might have to eat those words, because when I was exploring the Zodiac killer mystery, I was looking at the famous suspects that were laid out in front of us, and over time, I absolutely rejected all of them. I mean, just looking at them slowly and analyzing their activities, looking at their life story, looking at all the possibilities of how this person could have been the Zodiac killer, and I was like, ultimately, no, it's none of the main suspects. They all have problems. So with the Ripper case, I first started out by talking about some wild theories, such as the Jack the Ripper H.H. Holmes connection. Was Jack the Ripper the serial killer H.H. Holmes? And There's a guy named Jeff Mudgett who has a book out about that subject, and then I looked at some of the crimes. I really wanted to zone in on the crimes first, particularly the murders of Liz Stride and Catherine Eddowes, because those were ones that I found to be particularly fascinating, because that's something that is very different between Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer, and that is that there is this double event where two women were murdered in one night, two crimes were committed in one night, and the Zodiac Killer just didn't seem to do that. And I mean, lots of people are documenting the similarities between Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer. And there's even a book out there called Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer by Zed Simpson. I do not recommend it for the following reason. It's a bunch of discombobulated ranting, and it's not completely showing how the Zodiac Killer of the 1960s in California was inspired by Jack the Ripper. But I absolutely, 100%, 110% believe that the Zodiac was using Jack the Ripper as a particular playbook. No matter what theory you're going with, single killer, multiple killers, hoax theory, that's what I think was happening. So, that is something that you can explore if you want, but it's mostly just a little bit about Jack the Ripper, a little bit about the Zodiac Killer, and it's not very well intertwined. But one more time, Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer by Zed Simpson. But I will be getting to some more of the books about the Ripper case. I told you guys that I was going to start with The Seduction of Mary Kelly, which is actually a 2-volume series, and I have to give a shout out to Jay, who recommended Stephen Knight's book, and of course, what was the name? They Can't All Be Zodiac recommended Martin Fido's book. I want to look at that one, even though there's been somewhat of a contrast, or somewhat of a, conflict among you guys in the comments section, where they're saying that this whole theory about Martin Fido, who proposes a suspect named David Cohen, also known as Nathan Kaminsky, is just going to be absolutely wrong from the get-go, and other people are like, well, we want to hear about the suspect no matter who he is, and let's examine it. If the suspect is wrong, well, why not state the reasons why? And other people are like, no, he just got it wrong from the start. I want to know. See, I'm someone who's in the former camp. When someone is proposing a particular suspect, I will examine it. And I've always said this about true crime theories, no matter how wild or outlandish they are. If someone has a book out about a particular subject, or if someone is doing a podcast, or they have a series of YouTube videos, or even if they are just posting on forums, I'll talk about it, and I'll respond to it. And in the future here on this segment, I'm hoping that it's going to turn into something that is a little bit more general, where I can pull from different sources and different pieces of media and just share everything with you guys all at once. And once I can actually go through these books, I will incorporate them into a segment here on BlackBoxOnlineRadio that is called the 1-Minute True Crime Book Reviews. I started them about the Zodiac Killer, as well as the story of JonBenet Ramsey, the murder of JonBenet Ramsey from 1996. And I invite you to visit the shorts page here on this channel. But, I mean, I have to read the books first. I know it's absolutely shocking. You gotta read a book before you can do a book review on it. But I'm looking forward to going through all of the titles that I have shared so far. And, I mean, I perhaps could do one on Zed Simpson's book, even though I don't have too many nice things to say about it. I will give credit to Zed Simpson, because he is the one who introduced me to the Jack the Ripper complex. And that is the idea that Jack the Ripper committed at least 5 murders in 1888, the murders of Polly Nichols, Annie Chapman, as well as Liz Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Kelly. And then countless people have tried to attribute additional crimes to the Ripper, and it's called the Jack the Ripper complex, about how they're looking at the murders of Martha Tabram or Emma Smith, or the murder of Rose Milet, which I have an episode about here on this channel. And then, as I said, murders might even go up to 1891, maybe even beyond that, maybe even before that, or they're going to think that Jack the Ripper is somebody who committed the crimes and then moved to America. That's actually the subject of Robert Graysmith's book, The Bell Tower, that Jack the Ripper, now I don't want to misquote this because I'm going off of memory, but it was a guy from Scotland who moved to England and then moved from England to San Francisco and became a pastor, or at some point he becomes a pastor and then he moves to San Francisco, and Robert Graysmith, author of the 1986 book Zodiac, went on to write a book about Jack the Ripper called The Bell Tower. Now, I mean, let's just be very honest. Jumping into that subject, I think that there's a very low chance that that story is true, but again, I will investigate that. And if you can show how somebody's theory is wrong, why not do it? Do it on the merits. Show them that these very specific reasons about how, hey, that theory is incorrect for the following reasons. Because in the true crime world, people are going to propose different types of theories, and I think that it's so much more valuable to actually explore them as opposed to simply say, no, they're liars, no, they're making it up, no, they're just stitching together two pieces of information that don't belong together. We can say that until the cows come home. Let's actually evaluate the info. But out of all the Ripper crimes that I genuinely believe are part of the Ripper mystery, I mean, there are canonical crimes in the Ripper case, the murders of Polly Nichols, Annie Chapman, Liz Strike, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Kelly. I will do a larger episode in the future about the murder of Annie Chapman, because that is one crime that has been somewhat neglected here on these Ripper Wednesday segments. Because of the Charles Lechmere story, I did a couple episodes talking a lot about the murder of Polly Nichols, and I've talked about the murder of Liz Stride in the past. I have a standalone episode on her case. And in the recent episodes, I was talking a lot about Mary Kelly, particularly because of the Jill the Ripper theory. And as I said, that morphed into the story of how Mary Kelly committed the murders, and then she faked her own death. So the one crime that I've truly neglected on Ripper Wednesday has been the story of Annie Chapman, and I would like to explore that in the near future. So, again, you can hit the like button and subscribe if you want to talk about the Ripper in the comments section. I would like to read your messages, and you can also write me at BlackBoxOnlineRadio at AOL.com, and I'm going to keep exploring this particular mystery. And I have to be very honest with you guys, this is going to be a case that is going to be more difficult to solve than some of the other true crime cases out there, because a lot of the evidence has been lost. With the Zodiac killer mystery from the 1960s, a lot of the hard physical evidence remains. And then with the other stories that are even happening in a contemporary way, we have media of stories from the 90s and the 2000s, video footage, and I mean, DNA evidence. With the Ripper case, it's very, very abstract. And a lot of that just doesn't seem to hold up too well, because the hard evidence can disappear. I mean, as I understand, Jack the Ripper has 3 letters that are attributed to the killer. Now, they might be hoaxes, but the original Dear Boss letter, that's the first one, was stolen from the police archives and then returned in 1988 for the 100th anniversary of the Ripper crimes. But at that point, they could not extract any forensic evidence because it had been taken out and mishandled. And the From Hell letter, perhaps the most famous Jack the Ripper letter, does not exist anymore. And the From Hell letter is the one that was mailed with half a kidney that was contained in some type of it was placed in some type of alcoholic solution. As I understand that both the letter and the kidney no longer are preserved, so that also shows us that there is not a lot of evidence that has been left behind, and this becomes a breeding ground for other types of people who are just messing around a little bit. And one of them would be the guy who was promoting the theory that James Maybrick was Jack the Ripper. And that is that there was this diary that was discovered, and he's claiming that it was written by James Maybrick, and that he confessed to being Jack the Ripper. He's the subject of the Augsburg poisoning case. And again, I almost said suspect, but no, he's not the suspect. He was actually murdered. He died, and that his wife, Florence Maybrick, becomes the prime suspect. And I shouldn't have said murdered, because it's possible that he just died from an accidental overdose of medicines that he was taking at the time. Some of them were very toxic. And then Florence Maybrick goes on trial. She's found guilty, but ultimately her sentence is lesson. She was sentenced to death, actually, but then her sentence was commuted, and she got out of jail in like 1904, I think, and then she returned to America, where she was originally from, and she actually lived all the way until 1941. But I don't think there's any credibility to that story about James Maybrick being Jack the Ripper. What happened was that some guy named Michael Bennett found this diary, but I don't think he actually found the diary. He openly admitted that it was a forgery, and that him and his wife had worked on it, and they forged this because he had been researching the Augsburg poisoning case, and he wanted to write a book about the Augsburg poisoning case, but he wanted to make it sell more easily, so then he decided to put a Jack the Ripper slant on it. This will happen all the time. I mean, I kid thee not. This will happen all the time when somebody is going to be looking into a true crime case, and then they get nervous that their book won't sell, so they try to attribute it and attach it to a more famous true crime case. I mean, with the Zodiac Killer, I can give you countless examples of that, and with Jack the Ripper, it appears to be somewhat of a similar story. And in conclusion, as you see, I am a newcomer to this, and if I'm going to be launching something like a Ripper Report, Jack the Ripper Report, on the Wednesday show, that is only because I want to share my journey with you. I want to share how I'm learning about this information, and my honest take on the subject, the fresh set of eyes, if you will. So, feel free to tune in every Wednesday for a segment about Jack the Ripper, and if you are very knowledgeable about the Ripper case, put your ideas in the comment section down below. Tell me when I'm wrong, or even better, challenge me on the points when I say that somebody's not a good suspect, like James Maybrick, or even Charles Lechmere, or whoever Robert Graysmith is going to talk about, the Scottish pastor. I mean, that's a book that, again, I'm going to have to read, and then I'll talk to you guys about it for the Wednesday show. But let's talk about the ideas and the suspects and the crimes in the comment section. And one more time, you can hit the like button and subscribe. Visit some links in the description box. And that will be all from me now. In addition to the email address, you can also find me on Facebook. My personal Facebook is in the description box. And there is always BlackBoxNerd88 over on Instagram. And I will see you there for the bonus podcast. Until next time.